Well, this request came in by email. This person says, you mentioned in a quick tip that you would further discuss dynamic symmetry. That, by the way, was quick tip 255, quite some time ago, and I can't seem to find it. Well, of course you can't, because I didn't do it yet, but now we're going to do that. Well, dynamic symmetry is about visual movement. That's what quick tip 255 was about. Now, in the painting process, we really are working with visual movement. There are three major kinds of visual movement that artists work with, master artists we see all the time. Just to give you a flavor of what I'm talking about, we're all familiar with Botticelli, who used the circular movement, meaning that he was leading the eye in a circle. Not only leading the eye, but creating a balance by using a continuous circular movement. I gotta tell you, when I was in art school, we call this Venus on the half shell. But that doesn't, I thought you'd get a little kick out of that. And I think maybe we weren't the only ones. Well, that's the circular movement. Dynamic symmetry is not that. So we'll take that away. And then another kind of visual movement that you see artists often using is what David has used here in this familiar painting called The Death of Marat. They vertical and horizontal. Most of the major movement in the painting, as you can see, created by the lines of the shapes. The major movement in this is either vertical or horizontal. Doesn't mean there can't be some diagonals or circular movement in it. And all of these use all movement, but it's what's dominant that causes the overall interpretation of the piece. So, but this is not dynamic symmetry either, although sometimes in dynamic symmetry, vertical and horizontal are used. Dynamic symmetry is more about diagonals, angles. And this is an example. Now we see this sort of thing where artists will align the major movement from corner to corner. I talked about that. I've talked about that probably in several quick tips, but I believe I mentioned that in 255. I maybe stressed it. I did stress it in 255. So you can see here where the shadow is divided, or where the shadow and the light meet here, create a line that leads towards this corner and this corner, this corner and this corner. And then the position of the figure you see, and the way the light and shadow are falling on the figure, carry a movement that goes from that corner to that corner. That plays a role in dynamic symmetry. It sets the stage for dynamic symmetry, but it's not dynamic symmetry. But I must say that when you look through the history of art, when you'll see a lot of this going on, where the major movement is either going from the corner to corner in this direction or going to corner in that direction. And sometimes you'll find a strong movement going in both directions. So that is what dynamic symmetry is based on, but it's not the full story. Now, I must say this about it. Dynamic symmetry is a very complex theory. It's built on multiple kinds of grids. And when I say grid, I mean a format of movement that an artist is following. There are some artists in our history that used dynamic symmetry, or used at least some part of dynamic symmetry, but not all artists, as you might be led to believe by some people who are real devotees to dynamic symmetry. But you will see that those that use it very effectively. The danger is if you set a grid first and then try to make your images or your shapes fit into the direction of that grid, you run the risk of getting a very stiff work. So usually artists will loosely use dynamic symmetry. Now what is it? How does it work? Well, it's based on this business of, first of all, corner to corner. It's based on the relationship of the corners of a rectangle and the relationship of those corners to certain directions of the edges. Now I'll show you what I'm talking about there. And in order to do that, I need to draw a little bit for you here. I have a rectangle, and I have the rectangle divided in half here, and that'll make sense in just a moment, I hope. But all grids of dynamic symmetry begin with corner to corner. So let's just make a line here now that goes corner to corner. I'm going to show you one. I'm going to show you the simplest one and the one that you see used an awful lot, especially back in the Renaissance and post-Renaissance works. By the way, the dynamic symmetry principle started, well, the person that really made that into a theory is J. Hambidge. And he was studying what he noticed happening in the Greek works. But even all the Greek works are not formed by dynamic symmetry, even though he would lead you to believe they are if you go back and study the Greek of the paintings on vases and also whatever wall paintings we have left of the Greek artists. You'll see that it was used a lot, but not always. Okay, corner to corner, and that is a visual movement like we see here in this Rubens piece. You can feel that the way the figure is arranged there pulls our eye from corner to corner, and on that side, and corner to corner on this side. Now, the other thing about the dynamic symmetry principle and the corner to corner is that what we know to be the rule of thirds evolves from that too. And there will be people who will say the rule of thirds doesn't work, it's a lie. Well, the rule of thirds does work. All these work. It's a matter of which one you're using and how you use it as to how it's going to work in your painting. Okay, that's enough of that. Now, as I do this, I want to also show you what Rubens has done here. So we've already seen here that this is going from corner to corner. And so we'll just go ahead and I'll show you how his diagram works. I'll show you how his painting works according to dynamic symmetry, according to this particular grid of dynamic symmetry as I'm explaining it. So you can see that movement. See, it's right aligned really with the edge of the arm, but the whole figure is paralleling with that movement. And that's a lot, you'll see that an awful lot, where if the movement itself is not going corner to corner, a lot of times we'll see the movement actually parallels with the corner to corner. All right, now, and then this line, now you see this is dominant, meaning it's got more attention, it's catching more of our attention. Then let's go corner to corner here, as we've done in our diagram. And let's see if I can do that now. There we go, something like that. Okay, now we see a little bit of the directional movement on this side, the way he's tilted these shapes, this shape here, and we can see a little bit of the edge of that shadow against the edge of that, a little bit of light we see there, and the top of the woman's head. Those align with that corner to corner. This one's dominant. Okay, remember I said the whole, always the dynamic symmetry grid is based on this. The next part of the dynamic symmetry principle has to do with other movements and how we arrange those. And they are built on how the edges or the horizontal or vertical lines on the rectangle are divided. Now, we'll just go with the simplest one of, if we divide the horizontal rectangle, this is horizontal, if we divide the horizontal rectangle in half like that, and then we create two new lines that go from that halfway mark. Let's see if I can do this. From that halfway mark to the corner that's on this side first. Let's go there. Well, I meant that kind of slid there just a little bit. Okay, there. And then we go from corner to corner here. I'll go back and do that other one again. I should put it on this side. Let's just take that away, take that away, take that away. Okay. And let's get that corner to corner. There we go. That's more like it. There we go. Okay. Now, that gives us now a counter movement to what's going on in here. And now let's see if Rubens is using that same movement that goes from the halfway mark to this bottom corner. So we go from the halfway mark. I have the halfway mark already marked on this. So we go from the halfway mark to the corner there and create a line. Let's be sure I have that aligned right. Create that line. I kind of missed the corner a bit. Okay, we see there is this figure is going through that, but there's not really an angle there. And so we don't really see an honoring of that movement on that side. Now, artists will often do that. They will start with a grid, perhaps start with a particular grid formation, but then they won't use all the angles that are in there. That really would just be kind of almost boring to just repeat angles. And so let's go on the other side now, see if we can see where he might have used that angle on the other side. And we see here, he's using the directional movement right here just a little bit, but we don't see a real alignment of that movement on that side. Now, so let's go to the bottom half of that, because let's do the diagram first. So to complete this particular diagram, or this grid that belongs to dynamic symmetry, this is the basic dynamic symmetry grid. And to complete that, then we go to the half mark on the bottom side, and we create a line there, and then we do the same thing on this side, and that creates a complete grid. Now the theory is that these create symmetry. Symmetry means balance. It does not mean symmetrical. This is symmetrical because they are pretty much mirroring each other, but the symmetry itself is about the balance, about the visual balance. The movement of the dynamic part comes from its dealing with diagonals. Diagonals are called dynamic, whereas verticals and horizontals are called static. Of course, the circular is just called circular, or other things too. So you see the distinction there between the three kinds of visual movement, but the artists will often take portions rather than to take a complete diagram. Now you'll find some that do, but I don't think those are as interesting as those that will take just portions of the legs of the actual grid and align their images accordingly. So let's see, for this particular, from the bottom this way and the bottom this way, let's see, what has he done there? Let's do that. Let's see what we've got here. All right, we go this way, this way. There we go. And then we go from here to here. This is a way that you can analyze all paintings that you look at, and you want to find out something about what was the artist's thinking about getting a balance in there, or the visual movement balance. And you can refer back to the various kinds of dynamic symmetry and often find that. So now if we look at this line, we see that there is it's really an alignment that goes through the woman's head, and she is tilted in this direction. Now artists will do that too. They will create a direction by tilting the way a figure is looking. And like we see this figure looking in this direction, which sort of reinforces that movement there. you'll notice that you yourself, if there are a crowd of people, and if you really see someone look up like that, everybody else will look up there too. There is that psychological movement that takes place by the way a face is tilted, or by the way a building is tilted, or anything that has a front side, you might say. The way it's tilted causes a movement, an unstated movement that goes in that direction. So we see that he has not really created a strong direction following that one. And we can see here he's created some alignment. We can see an alignment right here with the way the light meets the shadow here in this little angle, and you can see how the tilt of the angle there. Just tiny little things like that. The way this angle is curved, you see that. But he's not used this. This is not really strong. So the main thing that we see is he's used these strong diagonals and has referred to the simplest or the basic dynamic symmetry grid for the alignment of other things. Now what we do see here, and this is also part of the way the dynamic symmetry works. Remember I said that we often see when we see an arrangement or a movement of a shape going corner to corner, we will often see parallels. We'll see other movements that are moving in that same direction, or sometimes we might just see movements going in that direction that parallel with the corner to corner without being in a direct alignment. We see the same thing with these secondary movements. The one that goes from center to corner, we'll see that same thing. Now, if you look, it's kind of stretching the point a little bit, but you can see right here, the way the fabric is falling, we can see that kind of a parallel alignment. And we see it right here too, the way the fabric is falling there's a parallel movement. And you can sort of look at the way right here we can see some parallel movement. So he's paying attention to that in order to make it fall in proportion. So that is the basic structure of dynamic symmetry. Now another one that we often see, I won't do here because I don't want to stretch this out too much. Another one that we will often see is one that moves this line over according to the golden section or the golden rule. We can always find that with the Fibonacci tool. I introduced this to you in one of the quick tips. I can't remember which one right now. The Fibonacci tool. If you really are interested in pursuing this kind of visual movement, you can get one of these little tools. And I'll recommend some other things in just a moment. But I want to show you just how this works so that you can take this forward. If you want to play with this, just play with the idea. You can try this. What the golden mean division of the horizontal does is this. It sets the line. It sets two lines at the top, and one is right here, where the larger part of the golden section is on this side. The smaller part is the corner. Then it turns it around and does the same thing on this side. And then this diagonal in this particular division, this is, I guess you say, the second most common use, perhaps, I don't know. This goes from here to here in the diagram, in the grid, and this one goes from here to here, and the same thing happens down here. The one on this side goes from there to there, and the one on this side goes to there, and that creates a slightly different angle in the grid. Now, dynamic symmetry doesn't appeal to everybody, and not everybody wants to get really involved in these kinds of diagrams. Other people, especially people who lean towards mathematics and geometry, the geometric portion of mathematics, get really excited about this sort of thing. So if this is something that interests you, it's all laid out here in this book. This really goes into most of the possibilities of using a dynamic symmetry grid. It's called The Elements of Dynamic Symmetry by J. Hamage. It's a very old book, but it still remains available in publication. So that's what dynamic symmetry is all about. It's all about visual movement that goes in diagonals, and those diagonals are balanced. The symmetry, the grid is set so those angles can be aligned in a way that they balance each other and keep that visual movement moving to include the whole painting, and the attention moving from one area to the other rather than it being off balance, or the movement being located in one area and the rest of the painting seeming insignificant. So if you want to play with that, give it a try. Be sure and view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianneMize.com where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.